Let's say the Titans decide to trade pick 35. What kind of trade packages are we looking at? Not just trading down from 35, but trading up, because Matt Miller has a really interesting report out about what the Titans might do in this draft. We're going to talk about it now with our guest, Zach Lyons. This is the Music City Audible. Let's get to it. Welcome everyone to another episode of the Music City Audible podcast presented by Broadway Sports Media in partnership with 440 Sports. I'm Justin Graver. With me, as always, Justin Melo. And Justin, as always, today we're talking Cam Ward. Wait, hang on. I'm getting word from our producers, which is me, that we are not actually talking Cam Ward today. We're taking a quick Cam Ward break because I feel like every video we've done for the past 2 months has been about Cam Ward, and we're gonna move away from that conversation today and talk about moving around in this draft. How's it going, Justin?
I'm doing well. It's funny. I'm gonna let our listeners in on a little nugget. This was not the plan. You know, we came on here with the intention today of talking about wide receivers that Titans might target at number 35 overall or, via trade back in and around that range. Then we got this report from Matt Miller, who talked about the Titans potentially trading up for a wide receiver. So that kind of changed the conversation a little bit. So we, as we do, we gathered, we persevered, and we decided to bring on our pal, Zach Lyons, a longtime friend of ours, also now, as you said, hosting Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop on 104.5 The Zone, to talk about this report, where he's at with a potential trade-up. He did some great work on Twitter, which is what kind of influenced us to bring him on regarding the trade value chart, what it might take for the Titans to move up, whether or not this report is accurate, and also talking through the trade back option, which is the one we've been expecting more, and this trade up report threw a bit of a wrench into that expectation. So great episode with Zach Lyons. If you're sitting there saying, hey, I really wanted to hear the wide receiver conversation at number 35 overall, let's talk about the wide receiver class. We are going to do that later this weekend. We decided to do 2 episodes, did one exclusively on the trade up report, talking through those options, trading back. We didn't want to cut it short. We also didn't want to do an hour-long episode to keep your guys' attention. So we did a whole separate episode that's coming out later this weekend on receivers. The Titans should target in and around 35. Graver and I have been watching a ton of tape. We may not agree completely on the receivers, which is good because we always agree, so it's nice when we don't. But we do have a great episode coming to you later this weekend about the receivers in this class.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, this was a last-minute pivot, so we saw Zach's tweet, reached out to him just to see, are you available to hop on last second, no planning really, and we got him audio only. So apologies to the YouTube viewers, but we'll put up
one of those stupid pictures of him.
Oh, we're going to put up a great shot of Zach that really captures his essence and beauty for the video audience out there. Before we get to Zach, a quick reminder that the Music City Audible channel is brought to you by Sinkers Beverages, the premier wine, spirits, and beer store in East Nashville. Check out the website linked in the podcast description to join the in crowd for exclusive perks. All right, Justin, let's bring on Zach. Let's talk some trades here with the Titans, and then, as you said, we'll have the receiver episode coming to you a little bit later on. But without further ado, we're thrilled to be joined by our guest now, our buddy Zach Lyons, award-winning Titans podcast host. Of course, you listen to him on Football and Other F Words, also doing great work on 104.5 The Zone, weekdays from 1 to 3 p.m., Blaine and Zach. Or have you guys changed the name now? Is it still called Blaine and Zach?
It's Cover 2, isn't it? Or something?
Yeah, it's Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons. Now we added the last name for more gravitas.
Yeah, I like the last name stuff there, and Cover 2 is great. Obviously, former DB. Anyway, Zach, we brought you on here today to talk about a recent report Matt Miller put out, whatever buzz he's hearing on all 32 teams, and there was an interesting nugget there about the Titans. He said, expect Tennessee to be aggressive in adding a wideout. No surprise there. The surprise is possibly with a trade up from number 35 overall to target a player such as Emeka Egbuka or Luther Burden III. Now, there's been a lot of talk about if one of those guys falls out of the first round, or that one of those guys or both those guys could fall out of the first round and be there at 35. But let's talk about the scenario where the Titans trade up from 35, because I think, many of us are going off what Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker have said since Borgonzi was hired, that the Titans want to accumulate draft picks. They don't want to give them away and move up the board. So what would a realistic trade up from 35 look like? Is that something that this front office would be willing to do after saying they want to accumulate more picks? And this would be the opposite.
So that they're really more concerned with having top 100 picks. And I know we're splitting hairs by talking about a, top 100 and 103. But, there's a big divide between day 3 and day 2, which makes sense, right? I mean, that's pretty much a duh statement. And I think that the players that you could find in the top of the second or the bottom of the first are of a totally different skill level and production level, just on aggregate in over NFL history than what you normally see. And probably even think. I don't think a lot of people think that there's only like 11% of day 3 wide receivers since 2015 that have gotten just 500 yards in their rookie season. I don't think there's a lot of people that know that there's almost just 7% of edge rushers since 2015 get 5 sacks, just 5 sacks in their rookie season. So I don't find a trade up to be so insane as it does on the surface, because it does sound pretty steep on the surface. Mike Herndon in our group chat is like, I'm with Matt Miller all the way to the end where he took a hard left turn. But at the end of the day, their main focus is top 100 picks, and they only got one top 100 pick anyway. So if you sacrifice a day 3 pick, which I don't know if that's really going to be enough to get it done, but maybe it is, and you're able to get into the bottom of the first or go up 2 spots and secure who or at least theoretically know, is going to be a big-time producer for your young quarterback, it's worth the risk. I don't care about the 4th or 5th round picks as much as maybe other people do, but I also think we got to remember when they said they wouldn't pass on a generational talent, or they said this and that. We got to remember, not everything that they say is gospel, and not everything that they say is meant to be literal. I do think they want more top 100 picks, but if you only got one and you're still going to only have one at the end, you might as well make it count on one of the best wide receivers available. I don't think this is going to happen, though, by the way.
Well, I'll just throw out there, because I agree with you. Look, the team has 2 4th-round picks, 2 5th-round picks, 2 6th-round picks, and you talk about the impact that those guys are going to have as rookies. Obviously, the draft is not just for their rookie season; it's for the future, mostly beyond 2025, really. Especially when you're talking about day 3 of the draft. But what are you going to add? Another special teamer, a linebacker, a backup guard? Sure, you need those positions, but do you need them right now as much as you need to make your rookie quarterback comfortable with weapons that he can actually rely on? And I'll just throw this example out there. Now, obviously, it depends how far from pick 35 the Titans want to move up. But last year, the Panthers moved from 33 to 32 to go get Xavier Legette, and all it cost them was 141 overall. So obviously, we're only talking about moving one spot in that scenario, but would 120 overall allow you to jump 3 or 4 spots to get to that, maybe like the Chiefs pick at 31? Obviously, Mike Borgonzi has a connection there. You throw 35 and 120 into a package for 31. That doesn't sound like you're giving up that much to make sure you go get, like you said, a player that your young quarterback really needs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, at this point, it's not about building the best team. It's about building the best team around Cam Ward. We're done with the idea of building the best team, right? Because they're not going to likely take a trade back unless someone offers them something historic. I know a lot of people hear that word and they're like, what does historic mean? Well, it means it's something that's never been done in freaking history. It's pretty easy to figure that one out since it's right there in the name. But like, that's not going to likely happen. So you're drafting Cam Ward. And if you're drafting Cam Ward, now it's about building the best team around Cam Ward. And right now, to me, that means wide receiver. I love the edge rushers. But if you're talking about, if I have to choose between Luther Burden or Igbuka over James Pierce or Donovan Ezeraku, I'm going the wide receivers because they get the extra bump because they immediately help the young quarterback. And wouldn't you rather have one of those guys than, I mean, I don't know, like a combo of who's a 4th round, David Walker and Isaiah Bond? I mean, maybe those aren't 4th rounders, but like those are the 2 names that come to mind. You could still get one of those with the other 4th round pick. So let's say you walk away with Luther Burden or Amika, and you still get a Kyle Williams, a Ty Felton, or a Jalen Lane or Isaiah Bond. You're still looking pretty damn good, and you didn't sacrifice much for it. I just think I think it makes sense on a surface if one of these wide receivers starts falling that they get aggressive and get the 5th round option on this wide receiver too.
Yeah.
Because wouldn't you rather have that as well than just wait? You can't risk, in my mind, depending on what the Browns and the Giants do, you can't really risk waiting on a wide receiver because you don't know who else covets those wide receivers. And I really don't think that Burden or Ibuka is really going to fall into the 2nd round. That feels like a pipe dream. So you do what you can to secure to get a current number 2 wide receiver and a future number 1 wide receiver.
Yep.
I'll say this. I'm not totally opposed because I love both of those prospects and, would be very excited if the Titans got one and paired one of them with Cam Ward. But I do think there are a couple things that are slightly misleading, and I don't think it's on purpose. But like Graver, for example, you said, "Oh, they got 2 fourths, 2 fifths, 2 sixths." Not that you're doing it on purpose, but that makes it sound like they are flush with draft capital. Well, that's not necessarily the case because they don't have a 3rd, right? And they don't have any 7ths, right? So 7th is a 7th, but they don't have those. So it's not like they've got a ton of picks. And then I think when we start to get excited and we talk about, it'll just cost them a 4th or 5th round pick. Well, we know this roster is really bad. And Zach, to your point, whereas they might not be able to get wide receivers and edges at those spots that can contribute immediately. I get that historically speaking, that doesn't happen. And there's a good reason that it doesn't happen. It's because those are premium spots that go earlier, right? But, they can get an interior lineman there to succeed Kevin Zeitler, a safety to succeed Xavier Woods. Amani Hooker, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., good football players on the roster right now that were drafted in that range. And again, when we get excited about trading up and it's only going to cost them a 4th, 5th round pick, at the same time, I think we all get a little carried away because when they're trading players in the middle of the season for a 4th or 5th round pick, we're like, well, I'm so glad they got that extra 4th or 5th round pick. Right? That's an extra pick. And then when it comes to trading it away, it's like, it's just a 5th round pick. Who cares? Right? So I get it. I would be very excited if they find a way to get Ed Buka or a Luther Burden. And I understand the whole notion that, hey, they're probably not going to get, historically speaking, a great receiver or edge at those spots. But again, bad roster. They need linemen. They need safeties. They need linebackers. Those non-premiums, you can get a good football player in the 4th or 5th round.
I don't know if they necessarily need linebackers. I'm not, too impressed with the linebackers they have on their roster, even though I do like Cody Barton after watching film on them. But like at the end of the day, I think you can get with this cornerback class or with the cornerbacks that they have and the 2 starting safeties, even with Mike Brown behind him, I think you can get away with having just run stuffer linebackers, but they're going to rely on Cedric Gray. So I don't know if they're going to spend a draft pick on a linebacker. Now, here's the thing.
I hope they don't.
Yeah, I don't think they will. But like, I do think that, people get excited for getting a 4th round pick for Ernest Jones. It's not because just to draft a 4th round player. It's because you have capital to move up if you want to move around the draft. So I'm a big proponent of, I get what you're saying. And listen, I have a limit on what they should spend. And I wouldn't spend both 4ths or a 4th and a 5th and a 6th and the 2nd, to move up for anything. I do have a limit. But I do think that the reason why people get excited about having, or at least I do, because it offers you options. I want the most options available. And the Tennessee Titans haven't really done as good of a job as they should have to fill all the holes on this thing, this roster heading into the draft. But again, if you're trading 103 and you're getting into the 1st, then with the 2nd, I would do that. I don't think there's really that much of a downside, but I do think that if you're to trade 2 fourths and move up and get nothing in return, but 33, no, I'm not doing that or anything. But at the end of the day, I kind of look at it and I go, I think there is a big gap between the top 3 wide receivers, and I'm not including Travis Hunter, and I'm not really including Golden. I'm just saying T-Mac, Ibuka. I guess I include Golden. Those 4 wide receivers and the rest of the class. I don't think it's particularly close. I know everybody likes the kid from Stanford. I don't understand it. Jalen Noel, I love his tape, but I do wonder if it will all go together in the NFL. I want the guy that I know that I have full trust in, and that guy to me is Burden and Ibuka. I have full faith that those two can produce on the field. So I'd rather take the shot at the sure thing than take a shot at the fourth round with one of those picks, because you still get a fourth and 2/5 and 2/6. You still have those. So you go from 8 picks to 7 picks, but you get Luther Burden or Ibuka. That's not a big drop off enough for me in draft capital not to pull the trigger if it were to happen.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. I'm glad you said that about having those picks to move around, because I don't get excited about the Titans' ability to draft another DeAndre Walker or Rashad Weaver or Des Fitzpatrick. Justin, I know you threw Amani Hooker and Jarvis Brownlee Jr. out as well. Yes, there are good players you can find there, but you are much more likely to hit on a receiver at the end of the first, top of the second round than you are day 4 or day 3 in the 4th or 5th round. But Zach, I also want to talk to you about, if you have time here, the idea of trading back from 35. I think there's two, because let's say that both of those guys make it to 35 and the Titans feel like they're comfortable with them or the next tier, which I would have put, Kyle Williams and Trey Harris and some of those guys in, that if they traded back from 35.
I love Trey Harris, by the way.
Me too. What kind of return could you get trading down from pick 35? Are we talking about like an extra 4th that then you can maybe package to move back into the 3rd and move around a lot? Or if you trade back from 35, can you actually get an extra 3rd round pick, or I guess just 1 3rd round pick from that?
Well, I mean, I think the Cardinals last year held pick 35, and they picked up. They moved back to either 43 or 46, if my memory serves, and they picked up an extra 3rd. And they had to give up a 6th round pick. So you can give up a 6th round pick. But you pick up a 3rd. And to me, that's worth it in this draft class. I wouldn't be opposed to trading back twice if the opportunity presented itself, as long as you netted 3rd round picks. I think you want as many picks in this particular draft in the top 100 as possible. And I know that seems counterintuitive because we're just talking trade up, but you would end up almost the same. But I think my preferred thing is to trade back at 35 and maybe even trade back twice. I love Trey Harris. I like Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel and all those guys. Those guys are worthy of 2nd, 3rd round picks. Kyle Williams. There's a lot of wide receivers, but there's also a lot of edge. There are 17 edge players in the top 100 of Dane Brugler's Beast. 17. Wow. That is an insane amount. And typically, over the years, anywhere from an average of 12 to 15 go in the top 100. And so I look at I think edge is going to be the thing that keeps going off the board, because you look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did. This is a copycat league. Everybody's going to be building through the trenches and pass rush more so than maybe even wide receivers and running backs and all that kind of stuff. So I think you may have to go edge, and then, but if I could trade back and get an edge and wide receiver in the 2nd and 3rd round, I think you're looking at a banger of a draft. I mean, that would be a fantastic draft. So what you hope, if you're a Titans fan that wants a trade back, Tyler Shook, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, they don't go 1st round. You want those guys to be near the top of the 2nd and everybody calling you, trying to trade up to get them.
Yeah, I think for me, trade back is still the most intriguing possibility and scenario, that they should entertain. I will say, again, I'm so high on Ibuka and Burden, and I think both of them, I agree, are like a tier above the next tier of prospects, that if one of them is there at 35, I may have a tough time being talked into trading back. But if both of them are gone, and there's a decent chance that they're both gone, it instantly becomes my favorite thing that they should do, because I think there are so many edge rushers and so many receivers you can kind of group into one tier that are going to be available there. And if you trade back to that 43, 45 range and you get the 69th pick or the 70th pick, then you know exactly what you're doing. Now, again, unfortunately, you're not getting one of the, a top tier players at those two premium positions. But at receiver, you are choosing between a Jaden Higgins, a Jalen Noel, a Trey Harris. Like, there's so many of them, a Kyle Williams, a Ty Felton, right? Like, you're choosing between one of those receivers. And then at edge, you're still probably choosing between like a Landon Jackson, a Jordan Birch, a Savion Jones, a Nick Scarton, Dominic Eziraku, Donovan Eziraku, Princely Oman Miel. And like, there are so many guys kind of bunched in, Femi Oladejo, like at receiver and edge, that if you do end up trading back, you're probably taking one from each of those groups.
Is there an edge rusher, Justin, that you wouldn't that you kind of put in that tier of Luther Burden and Mika Ibuka that if they fail, you wouldn't pass on it?
No, to be honest with you, there isn't, which is kind of weird for me to say, but
I'm a little surprised by that, I have to say.
Even
I always have
Eziraku,
100th grades on first
I
round
feel like
picks.
no, I feel like Eziraku might be just the production sort of that guy.
He's the one that's closest for me because of the production and the athletic measurements.
What about Pierce?
The off-field stuff, I just wonder about. Like, there's just so much smoke there with the off-field. And I really like Mike Green as well. Like, Mike Green I think I actually put Mike Green above James Pierce, because I'll say this.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, the Mike Green stuff, and I've heard in depth, the Mike Green stuff, I think, concerns me a little bit less than the James Pierce stuff that I've heard. So I really like Mike Green on tape. And I do think him and Donovan Eziraku would be the two that are very, very close. I do think they are better than a James Pierce, factoring in the off field, than a Landon Jackson, than a Nick Scarton, a Savion Jones, Jordan Birch. With Eziraku, I think the question for me, and it's going to sound cliche, but I've spoken to scouts about it, like, is he a great early down player? Like, I think the worst case scenario is that he's kind of a designated pass rusher, and that's not great value at 35, right? When you're bringing those guys in just to rush the passer. That's the one. I'm on the fence. I'm not going to sit here and say I definitely don't think that he can defend the run, but I can't sit here and say with confidence that I definitely think he can, is like a high level guy at the next level. So that's where I'm at. What about you, Zach?
Yeah, I would have a hard time passing on Pierce, not Eziraku. Nothing against Eziraku, but I would think that I'm kind of with you. Is like the trade down would probably be too good to pass up just for Eziraku. But I do think that James Pierce, with his supreme athletic ability, his production, I think that I get the concerns, and those concerns are legit. And, he works out by himself, and, he kind of is a loner and stuff like that. But I think that the talent is just too hard to pass up at that point, because if you look at how the NFL's edge rushers work, you can get by with a guy without supreme athleticism as long as you have elite production. But if you got a guy that has both, it's like 80% chance he's going to work out. James Pierce has both in the advanced metrics and on tape and on the athleticism. So it would be really, really hard. As far as defending the run, I get it, but that's also why you got Draymond Jones and Lorenzo Carter. Those guys could set the edge in my mind. But man, this team just needs speed and pass rush so bad. And I think that James Pierce could bring that. I don't know if I'm completely 100% James Pierce over trade back, but it'd be pretty close.
Not that you're saying he's not, but he checks a lot of those. 16 and a half sacks this past year production.
Yeah.
Fastest shuttle, fastest three cone at the combine. Both of I think it was a 4.25 shuttle, a 6.94 three cone, fastest among all edge rushers in Indy. So he checks a lot of boxes for me as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. It would be tough. Eziraku would have me. It's not a foregone conclusion either way on either of those guys for me. But wide receiver, oh yeah, I wouldn't trade back if it's Burden or Ibuka.
I'm on the same page as Zach. And with edge, I guess just a tier below those two, I can agree that I can get the Pierce thing. I'd put Eziraku and I would put Mike Green in that bucket. Like, those are the near equivalents of having Igbokwe and Burden at 35.
If Mike Green is there for whatever reason at 35, he's definitely in the Burden and Igbokwe for me. I don't think he's going to be there, but if he is, I would take Mike Green for sure.
I agree. I think he's probably going top 20 though, if I had to guess today. The only other scenario to cover would be the Titans moving, like packaging some day 3 picks to come back up after picking at 35 to come back into the third round, and that might be something that they're not necessarily planning to do because they might want to trade down from 35, but then the scenario we're talking about happens and they end up sticking and picking, but they still want a third round pick. So then they come up. I could see that playing out too. Zach, really appreciate your time. Everyone make sure you're tuning in weekdays to 104.5 The Zone. What is it, 1 to 3 p.m., Zach, to listen to Cover 2 with Zach Lyons and Blaine Bishop, or is it the other way around? Your name should go first.
Blaine
Zach,
Bishop and Zach Lyons. Blaine first.
Your name should go first. I think.
He's at 3. He's in 3 or 4 Hall of Fames. I think he's in 5 Hall of Fames across 3 states. So his name goes first.
Right, fair
Zach, your picture has to be up on some wall at like a local burger beer joint or something in the Nashville area.
Probably a wing place down in Lewisburg, Tennessee, if it's still around. I'm not sure it is because I did a ghost pepper wing challenge there.
Oof. Well, thanks a lot, Zach. Appreciate you calling into the show, our first call-in guest. So talk to you soon.
There you go.
All right. Thanks again to Zach. Really appreciate his time there, hopping on, like I said, last minute with us with virtually no warning. He was like, yeah, sure, I can do it. I'm driving into the studio, but I can call in and make it happen. And we really appreciate him for doing that. Justin, let's boil this down to, we obviously know there are, 3 options with pick 35. I think this goes without saying. You can trade up, you can stick and pick, or you can trade down. Obviously, it takes 2 to tango, so you got to find a team willing to make a move with you. But if you had to choose your preference, and obviously how the board falls and which players are available matters in this scenario, but do you have a preference, or is it sort of like, I don't know, it depends on what's happening when, we get to pick 30-ish and see what receivers and edge rushers and players are still on the board?
Yeah, to try to narrow this down as much as I can, but not trying to give a cop-out answer, I think I'd be most excited about Igbokwe or Burden at 35. I think that makes the most sense for me. If they're not there, I am more than likely trade back, though I could probably get on board. I think this is a good answer. I could get on board with Mike Green or Donovan Ezeraku there at 35, but I probably go Igbokwe and Burden up here, trade back here. Just went a little lower if you could see like Green Ezeraku here, sticking and picking someone else at 35, including James Pierce, because I do have questions about the off-field stuff. That's where I'd put that. Yeah,
I think trading up is an interesting concept, and I totally wouldn't rule it out. I think something Zach said there was really interesting and well pointed, which is that we shouldn't listen to what they have been telling us in these combine press conferences, Senior Bowl, random off to the side interviews, like all the stuff they're saying about not wanting to pass on a generational pick. We want to accumulate as many picks as possible. I've said this on a previous podcast, but they're talking general draft approach, wide, 1,000-foot top of the mountain view, not our specific plans for this draft are X. Like, that's not what they're saying. So I think we're going to do an episode closer to the draft, Justin, that I'm calling Reality Check, where we're going to dish out some cold, hard truths about how the draft's going to go. And I think one of the biggest ones that we'll talk about in a couple of weeks is this draft is not going to go how you expect. They're not just going to take a quarterback and a receiver and then an edge rusher and then another receiver. Like, there's going to be some wild cards thrown in there that we're not expecting at positions that aren't needs right now, but could be needs in the future. Guard, cornerback, safety, things like that. So we'll talk about that later. But I think just expecting that they stick and pick at 35 and take a receiver, it could happen. Matt Miller was saying they're going to be aggressive to get a receiver, but they could totally throw us a wild card, a curveball, and go another direction, which we'll cover as we get closer to the draft. All right, any final thoughts on trading, moving around in this draft? I think if I had to answer the question, by the way, I think sticking and picking at 35 and then coming up into the third round, like using the fourths and the fifths that you have a surplus of to come back up to pick 70 to 80 range, I wouldn't hate that idea at all. In fact, I think that might make a lot of sense, especially if a guy like Kyle Williams is still sitting there mid-third round and you're getting nervous that he's not going to make it to you at pick 103. But anyway, final thoughts, Justin?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna. It depends. I think that's a decent point. It's very similar to the trading up from 35 because it would cost you, as we said, 103, whatever it is. So you could do the same thing and come up to 80 by potentially including 103 and something else. So it's going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. But fun episode with Zach. I hate that him and I agreed so much. Do we ever agree in DMs? Then we get on the show together and we're doing nothing but agreeing. But a lot of fun with Zach and looking forward to the receiver episode. I've been brushing up a ton on this receiver class. So excited to kind of share my film study.
Yeah, same. And you're looking for disagreement? There's going to be some of that on the receiver episode between you and me, because we do not really see eye to eye on many aspects of this receiver class. Some we do, some we don't. All right, that'll do it for this one. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Give this video a thumbs up, like, turn on channel notifications so you get an alert when we drop a new video. We're going to ramp up our coverage here a little bit with our podcast output as we close in on the draft. So make sure you have those notifications on so you know every time we drop a new video. And drop a comment below. What's your preference with pick 35? Stick and pick, trade down, trade up. We want to hear from you guys. We will get in those comments and respond to you, and let's have a dialogue. Let's start a dialogue, as they say, Justin. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks to Sinkers Beverages as well. Until next time, y'all stay safe out there and tighten up.
A Broadway sports media production.